What is going on, everyone? I am back, and what I wanted to do today is actually share with you a result from my live draft that happened only 2 days ago now. And this is for a 12-man PPR league, so I think it'll be pretty relevant. And did it through Yahoo, so rankings is a little bit different there, but nonetheless, I stuck by my own rankings, and you'll see that throughout the draft. But before we begin, I actually just wanted to point out a couple things. So in this league, the way that we choose our draft picks is pretty random. Just taking names out of a hat, and then wherever your name comes out, you get to choose what pick you had. So I actually got drawn out pretty early, and the first pick of overall was still available. So I got the first pick, and immediately I got a lot of trade offers. And as a result, I did a lot of research and a lot of deliberating on what I could do if I moved back, what I would be getting in return. And I just wanted to let you know that I did execute a trade. And I know I'll probably get a lot of flack from everyone, but I feel really confident in how it turned out. And I think that you guys, some of you might change your mind after you see the roster that was made. But to give you more info on the trade, what I did is I moved my first round, first overall pick and swapped it with the pick that was picking fifth overall. I did that in the first, second, and fourth round. Then I got their third round pick also, and their 11th round pick, while they got my fifth round pick and my ninth round pick. So what I was looking to do there was stockpile a lot of selections in the first 4 rounds, and then have already built a really strong roster from the start. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. And as you can see, I have my draft results here pulled up, and I'm gonna kind of go pick by pick, round by round, and give you guys some of the analysis that went into it. So let's start with the first pick overall. I think it was pretty, obvious that it was going to be David Johnson here. I knew if I had stayed here, I would have picked David Johnson. But for me, the issue that I had with the first pick overall is I didn't want to wait in that snake format and just wait 24 selections before getting the chance to pick again. So for that reason, one of the reasons that I traded down, but nonetheless, David Johnson went first, then Le'Veon Bell. Then a little bit of a surprise at number 3, we had Julio Jones being selected as the first receiver off the board, which, I thought, okay, great, I'll have definitely at least Odell Beckham available. But then probably the biggest shock in the first round was Shady McCoy going fourth overall. And for me, I think this pretty much automatically won me the draft that I was mentioning, because this allowed me to get Antonio Brown with the fifth pick overall. And what I initially was thinking was reaching maybe for a guy like Melvin Gordon, the guy that I was really high on as a running back. But when you have the chance to take Antonio Brown in a PPR league, you do not pass that up. And I have no regrets with how that turned out. So going on forward, afterwards, we had a run on receivers. We had Odell, as expected, then Mike Evans, then AJ Green. So all that pans out as you would expect. Then Devonta Freeman goes right before Jordy Nelson, which I think is pretty accurate. I probably would have picked Devonta Freeman also before Jordy Nelson. And then again, a little bit of a surprise. We had Jay Ajayi go in the first round before the likes of a Melvin Gordon, before the likes of Jordan Howard or someone like that. So another kind of surprise. But then to finish off the first round with the 12th pick, Melvin Gordon goes, and I actually thought that was very good value for the person that was picking 12th overall in our league, and I really liked that. But then let's move on to the second round, and here, again, the person picking 12th overall has those two selections back to back, and with that second selection, they went with Michael Thomas. Now, I would probably say that Michael Thomas at this point, best available receiver left, but I do think that after the first round and going into the second round, unless there have been some guys that have been really overlooked, there's a significant drop off in players, and that's one of the things that I think is really important to keep an eye out on. So just really hope that your first round pick um, is is very solid, and just kind of pray for no injuries and understand that in the second round, there is a little bit of a drop off. So you really want to do feel confident in your first couple of picks. But like I said, moving on with this first pick in the second round, Michael Thomas goes. Then going back down, working our way back down, we have Jordan Howard go, followed by DeMarco Murray. Not bad value for DeMarco Murray here in the second round, especially if he has the kind of year that he had last year. And then going down, Leonard Fournette. I think maybe a little bit of a surprise again. Pretty early in the second round for him to go. I personally have expressed to you guys before how I feel about taking those rookie runners this early on. Jacksonville, the situation there is a mess. They don't know who's going to start as quarterback. So I feel a little bit iffy with that. But then we had Des Bryant go, and I Des Bryant is a guy that I really like, but just maybe not in PPR leagues as much. But still, you can't be upset about getting Des Bryant in the second round. So it is what it is. Then moving on, we have Doug Baldwin, and I know Doug Baldwin. I've had him in my last two uh, seasons in fantasy, and he's been a stud. But I think this is a little bit too early. I personally wouldn't have picked Baldwin until the third round, but here he went in the middle of the second round, and that was that. Then right before me, I was actually very upset at this selection because Zeke was a guy that I was targeting and that I was hoping that I would land in either the second round or the third round, because I was hoping to, once I hit the receiver position in the first round, to have Ezekiel Elliott, and that way, even though I passed up on a guy like David Johnson, to still end up with an elite running back, even though he might be suspended for the first couple games. So he goes right before me, and of course that kind of ruins a little bit of my draft strategy, and I have to adjust on the fly. So right afterwards, I thought to myself, I'm just going to go with the next best available player. And for me, what that meant is, okay, I'm just going to gamble a little bit and go ahead, take Rob Gronkowski. And this is a little bit outside of my usual draft strategy. I do not like to take a tight end this early, especially one like Gronk, who I don't know if he's going to stay healthy. So a big risk, I would say. But at the same time, I thought this was pretty good value almost towards the end of the second round. Gronk is still available. And if you kind of see some of the guys that went afterwards, I think he puts up more points than all of them. So I'm happy with the pick. And immediately I have two very good pass catchers. So then moving down, we have Ty go. Again, I think this is pretty good value, almost all the way at the end of the second round, but that's going to be very dependent on what happens with Andrew Luck. Then we had Isaiah Crowell. I think this is insanely high for Crowell, but apparently people in our league felt otherwise. And now with the second to last pick in uh, in our league, I actually traded up, and the reason I did that is because I knew the person picking at the end of the second round that got my first round pick from that trade was targeting a guy that I liked in Keenan Allen. So what I did to move up is I just swapped picks in the third round with the person I was picking second overall, and so they had back-to-back picks in the third round, and I went from second to picking fifth in the third round, and that allowed me to move up in the second round by uh, two spots. And by doing so, I was able to get a guy in Keenan Allen that, again, I'm very high on, and I've expressed that before. I've gotten a lot of flack from people, whether it's actually a worthwhile pick because everyone thinks that he's going to get hurt and he's going to be out for the year, and that's going to happen pretty early on. But I think that this is going to be the year that Keenan Allen stays healthy, and by doing so, I think this is going to be another breakout year for him, especially in PPR. I love him in PPR. He's one of Rivers' favorite targets, so I think for me, this is a pick that I'm really personally high on. Now, to finish off the second round, we have Amari Cooper go, and I would say this is pretty good value for Amari Cooper. This is a good way for that person that got David Johnson to rebound in terms of a receiver, getting Amari Cooper. But now let's get into the third round, and with the third round, we had the team that I traded up with having back-to-back picks, and he goes Lamar Miller and then Brendan Cooks. So pretty good picks in my opinion, especially it's going to be dependent on whether Lamar Miller, the kind of year that he has. But if he has a really good year, pair him up with Le'Veon Bell, and you have two studs. Then going to the third pick, we've got Terrell Pryor, and I think this is where you really see that drop in receivers. But there's hope with Pryor, a PPR guy going to Washington, going to be probably the main target there. So there's hope with him. Then fourth pick, we've got Demaryius Thomas. Again, now that we know that Simeon won the quarterback battle in Denver, maybe maybe he's got a little bit more value in Demaryius Thomas, but I'm still not sold on Simeon, and I'm not sold on the Denver offense. So now we get back to my pick in the third round, and here I was kind of in a dilemma a little bit. I didn't know who to target specifically. I didn't know whether to go with the receiver that I really like, or maybe even with a quarterback. But obviously, I knew that my running back position was non-existent at this point. So for that reason, I knew that I had to pick between two guys, and those two guys were Gurley and McCaffrey. So ultimately, I ended up going with Gurley, and the reason for that is because I know Gurley's not going to split time. I know he's not going to have red zone touchdown vultures with guys like Cam and Stewart. But at the same time, he's on a much less explosive offense with the Rams. It's going to be very dependent what happens there. New coach, new system. But I thought Gurley, with a little bit more experience, I'm gonna ride with that. And I thought this was pretty good value for Todd Gurley in the third round. So that was another reason why I went with that pick. Then right after me, Christian McCaffrey goes. So I thought that was, at that point, the person that picked him already had Ezekiel Elliott, so they kind of also needed to pick a running back, and they went with McCaffrey, so I can't blame them for that. But afterwards, we've got DeAndre Hopkins, and then towards the end of the third round, Aaron Rodgers. Now, I've told you guys that I think, stay away from quarterbacks early on, but with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, you're going to see this trend, and ultimately probably deservedly so, because he'll be the leading quarterback in terms of fantasy. But if it was me, I probably would have waited until the early fourth round to take him. But that's just me. Then a little bit of a surprise here. Travis Kelce goes in the third round. This is probably the earliest that I've seen Travis Kelce go in all of the drafts that I've done. And, that makes me glad that I picked a little bit Gronk where I did, because Kelce was the next guy that I had on my list, and I would not have spent a third round pick on him. Then moving down, another big surprise in the third round, Joe Mixon going with 3 picks to go. And for me, this is just a very bad pick. I think there were running backs left that were a lot better. I think there were running backs left that were in better situations. I think there were just players that were left better overall. So case in point, next pick, Tom Brady. I would have had Tom Brady rather than Joe Mixon, for example. But also it's interesting to me that Tom Brady going before Drew Brees, but apparently, that's how a lot of people feel. And then finishing off that first round, we have Carlos Hyde. So now let's move on to the fourth round. And here we've got Golden Tate go, which, that's the first pick in the fourth round. Not bad, but I was surprised that a guy like Alshon Jeffrey didn't go before him, especially with him being the main guy in Philly right now. And then, unfortunately, right here, this was another pick that I was very much so targeting in Marshawn Lynch. Now, I had to wait a little bit. I would have had to wait 8 picks for him to fall on me, but you know how you kind of get a feel of where your league values certain players. And I knew that my league did not necessarily value Marshawn Lynch, especially the guys that I was drafting with. Some people were drafting off-site, and this was one of those people. Unfortunately, picks Marshawn Lynch, and I couldn't 100% solidify my running back group, but so I had to wait a little bit. Then Ty Montgomery goes. Um, I've been scared off by Montgomery a little bit, especially with the reports about Williams coming out that he's getting more and more carries. Then Dalvin Cook, he's been getting a lot of hype this season, and maybe deservedly so when it's all said and done. We will see. That is still to be determined. Then we've got Drew Brees, um, fourth round, and I think this is early for Drew Brees. I just think it's a situation where the person picking kind of sees that um, all those top two quarterbacks have already gone, and he also wants to nab a starting quarterback. Otherwise, I think Drew Brees probably should last until the fifth round. And then we've got Devontae Adams go. To me, a little early in the fourth round. Then Crabtree, not bad value considering looking at his touchdown production the last 2 years. Then we've got Danny Woodhead, another PPR guy. CJ Anderson, for me, not personally too high on CJ, especially with all those running backs in Denver. And then finally, we get back to my pick. And again, I was in a little bit of a conundrum because, you know, do I reach on a running back or do I try and stay patient and wait for that running back to come to me, to drop to me? And what I decided to do is be patient and target another player in whether that be as a flex or some other position. But ultimately, it was the flex because I already had my two wide receiver positions filled, had my tight end position filled. But what I actually did, maybe not 100% super popular, but I went ahead and drafted Greg Olsen. Now, I know I already have Gronk, and my thinking here was, well, Greg Olsen is probably the best available pass catcher left. Comparing him to guys to like Tyreek Hill and Martavius Bryant. I'm very high on Martavius Bryant, but I already have Antonio Brown, and I didn't want to have two of the top receivers in Pittsburgh. I think that's kind of just illogical. Obviously, if Antonio Brown gets hurt, Bryant is the guy, but that's not how you go into the draft thinking. So I went ahead, picked Olsen. I've got two tight ends now, but Olsen is a target monster. He's one of Cam's favorite targets, and potentially could use one of those guys as trade bait to upgrade one of my needy positions. Next, we've got Allen Robinson ending the fourth round, and then starting the fifth round, Tyreek Hill, Jordan Reed. So as you see, I've been saying it. Jordan Reed to me is the fourth ranked tight end, and this shows that. Then we've got Matt Ryan. Again, probably a little bit early for Matt Ryan, but just how the quarterback situation worked out. Then Martavius Bryant, and I think Martavius Bryant, Tyreek Hill, both going in the fifth round. I'd seen some more separation between them in some of my other mock drafts, but uh, I think this is a good representation of the value that they both represent. Then moving forward, we've got Mike Gillislee. We've got Sammy Watkins. I think this is definitely a reach for Watkins, especially now that he's on the Rams. But then let's keep it going. We've got Spencer Ware, a very intriguing pick. I think he has the potential in PPR to be very good, unless he gets his role taken by Kareem Hunt. Then we've got Blunt, and what I thought was a steal of this round was Julian Edelman, lasting all the way in the fifth round. I know if I had a selection in this round, I would have gone with Edelman. But again, this is where I paid the price in the fifth round. and I did not have a pick here. So I kind of just spectated Julian Edelman, then Jamison Crowder, Kelvin Benjamin, and then finally Larry Fitzgerald. Now let's go into the sixth round. We've got, actually, I thought, which was pretty interesting, we've got Mark Ingram and then Adrian Peterson going back to back. I had seen a lot more separation with these guys. Maybe a little bit of a surprise that Ingram is still here in the sixth round, but uh, I didn't expect Ingram and then Peterson to immediately go. And now here, you'll see a little bit of a run on quarterbacks. We've got Wilson, and then immediately after, we've got Andrew Luck, then Deshaun Jackson, Jimmy Graham, the next tight end. And to me here, this was the steal of this sixth round, or maybe a tie for a steal, because I really liked my selection at the end. But we've got Jarvis Landry, who I think will be a great PPR option. Then we've got Emmanuel Sanders, Willie Snead, Tyrell Williams. All these four guys are guys that I'm really high on. Then Tavon Coleman, and then finally gets back to me. And at this point, I knew I had to address the running back position again, and I was shocked and amazed that a guy in Bilal Powell that I'm extremely high on this year. I loved what he did last year when Forte was injured, and Forte is kind of hampered with injuries right now. So I went with Bilal Powell, and I think I benefited here because if this was ESPN or some other draft, I don't think Powell is still there in the sixth round, but Yahoo has certain rankings that are pretty different, especially in their player rankings. So Powell kind of just stood there hidden away and made his way all the way down to me. So I loved my pick right there. And there, going into the seventh round, we've got guys like Brendan Marshall, who was a guy that I would have targeted, but I knew that I needed to finally address the quarterback position. And I went with a guy in Jameis Winston that again, I think could have that MVP dark horse season year. Then we've got some of these tight ends and other quarterbacks going: Kyle Rudolph, Kirk Cousins, Amir Abdullah, Mariota, Paul Perkins, Martellus Bennett. I've been singing his praises, and he goes in the seventh round. So I think that's kind of showing that a lot of other people also value him. Then Stephon Diggs, Eifert, Eddie Lacy, and Jeremy Maclin to finish it off. Okay, not too bad. And now going in the eighth round, we've got Doug Martin, Delaney Walker, and now here we've got our first defense being selected. Maybe too early, we'll see. But at the end, you know that when you pick Denver, that'll be a defense that you won't have to stream every week. Then we've got Dante Moncrief. I thought it was a pretty good selection here in the eighth round. Houston defense, Cameron Meredith, Derrick Henry, Cam Newton. Also, another pretty good selection here in the eighth round. Then Theo Riddick, Devontae Parker, Seattle. And for me, I thought this was actually the steal of the eighth round. And again, it's my pick, but maybe I'm a little bit biased. But I got Pierre Garcon in the eighth round, a guy that people have been talking about as a breakout guy. And I'm excited to have him. He's only my bench player, and so that has a lot of potential there. Then going into the ninth round, we've got Kareem Hunt, Dak Prescott, Frank Gore, Ertz, Cobb, McFadden go right here. And luckily enough, the guy that got McFadden stayed patient, and he was also the one that got Ezekiel Elliott. So that worked out well for him. Then Rob Kelly, Duke Johnson, some more defenses, kickers, and Phil Rivers to end the draft over here. So I'll kind of conclude in terms of going the round by round selection here, and I will now show you guys what my final roster looked like when I put it together. So let's go to that, and just so that you can see a compiled picture of the team. So this is my final roster. Now I've got Jameis Winston at quarterback, Antonio Brown, Keenan Allen, Todd Gurley, Bilal Powell, Gronk, Greg Olsen, and my bench is Pierre, Thomas Rawls, Jamal Williams, James Conner, and Robbie Anderson. Now with my bench, you can kind of see I decided to go with certain guys that are backups to some pretty big name running backs, and I tried to also get some hidden gems, a guy like Robbie Anderson, who's pretty much the number one receiver in New York. a guy in Thomas Rawls, who I've been hearing a lot of good things about him potentially winning the starting gig in Seattle as the starting running back. But let's get back to the main roster and kind of evaluate the situation after the trade and what happened. So I would say overall, I think the trade that I got was one on my part. I got Antonio Brown, then I was able to get a guy in Gronk that personally my league probably doesn't value tight ends as much, but I still think he's a second round pick, a good second round pick, and then able to get a guy in Keenan Allen that I'm really high on, and then again in the third round, kind of because of I stockpiled a lot of those picks, still able to get Todd Gurley, and I know the book is still out on him whether he's going to be good or not this year, but he has the potential. And then being able to add Greg Golson potentially as trade bait, but also an excellent flex option, and then waiting for Blau Powell and landing Jameis Winston. I'd personally give my draft an A. Let me know what you guys think. How would you grade this? Seeing some of the draft results, who would you have selected? Would you have done the trade? Even though I suspect I know what the answer will be, which will be probably an astounding no, but I think this turned out well. Let me know what you guys think again. Like, subscribe, and expect another one of these live draft results to be coming out